This is Mafia, the lullaby that started a blood oath. Most of us have heard some version of this song during our childhoods, often sung to us by our parents or other family members. But in Sicily, Italy, there is a different version of this song, one that children are warned not to sing, or else risk angering the mafiosos. This version has dark lyrics detailing a baby's execution and warning the listener that if they tell anyone about what they heard, they will be killed. And for centuries, nobody knew where these mysterious lyrics came from or why people were so afraid to recite them. But thanks to one man's obsessive research, we now know the origin story behind the most terrifying rendition of Rockabye Baby. It all started when Italian folklorist and musician Mimmo Locasule began researching the origins of traditional folk songs. For years, he had been collecting old recordings of Sicilian folk songs, interviewing locals and combing through ancient texts, looking for obscure musical pieces to add to his collection. But it was the song Mafia that fascinated him the most. I'd first heard it as a child growing up in eastern Sicily. But after hearing the darker lyrics associated with its later renditions, he became determined to figure out where they came from. And while researching the song, he discovered something incredible. Mafia isn't just a lullaby. It actually originated as an ancient work song used by farmers working in the Sicilian fields. The original lyrics had nothing to do with babies being murdered, and the melody wasn't even close to the one we know today. But over the centuries, the song slowly changed as more and more stanzas were added, eventually transforming into the sinister tune we know today. But why? Why would farmers turn their happy work song into such a violent nursery rhyme? To find the answer, Locasole traveled throughout Sicily, searching for someone who could help him uncover the truth. And eventually he found an old farmer named Antonio, who had grown up singing the original version of the song before the lyrics were changed. According to Antonio, the song was originally called Yeranula, and it was used to soothe babies so the mothers could work in the fields. The lyrics were about birds, trees, and flowers, nothing violent at all. But then one day, a group of mafiosos went to the town where Antonio and the other farmers lived. They wanted to recruit some of the men to join their ranks, but they refused. As punishment, the mobsters killed 3 of the men and left their bodies outside the town square. The townspeople were terrified, so they turned to their local priest for help. He advised them to appease the spirits of the dead men by singing them a funeral dirge. The priest composed the somber tune that we now recognize as the melody of Mafia. Then the townspeople added lyrics detailing the events that had transpired, turning the once cheerful song into a lament. Although the lyrics didn't mention the mafiosos by name, word got back to the mob that someone was singing a song about their atrocities. So they did what any self-respecting criminal organization would do and launched a brutal attack on the town. They stormed the streets, beating everyone they encountered until they reached the house of the priest who had composed the dirge. They dragged him outside and demanded he sing the song for them. When he refused, they beat him to death. Then, to make an example of him, they strung his body up on the nearest tree. The people were so traumatized by what had happened that they fled the town, abandoning it to the mafiosos. Now that the coast was clear, the mobsters moved into the empty homes, seizing everything they could. Then they went out into the fields and destroyed the crops. They also hunted down and killed anyone who had sung the dirge or even heard it being sung. From then on, the area became known as the Silent Zone, where nobody dared speak a word for fear of attracting the attention of the mafiosos. Over time, the memory of those killed faded away, but the threat of the mafiosos still lingered. Whenever someone dared to sing the dirge, it only took one person to hear it before the news reached the mob. In retaliation, people began censoring themselves, refusing to even acknowledge the existence of the song. Soon no one knew the tune, and the horrifying lyrics became nothing more than a legend. For decades, this is how things remained, until Mimmo Locasule came along. His research uncovered the horrific truth behind the song and inspired him to set things right. In 1994, he released an album called Teen Teen, which included his rendition of the Mafia. It was unlike any other version of the song because instead of trying to make the lyrics sound cute, he emphasized the dark tone of the piece. The result was so haunting that it immediately became an international sensation, selling over 2 million copies and inspiring other musicians to create their own versions. Some people were scared to perform it, though. like Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli, who refused to sing it for 10 years because he thought it was too violent. Or pop singer Eros Ramazzotti, who sang the song once during a concert and then received numerous death threats from unknown people. Most of these threats were likely made as a joke. They show just how powerful the song's lyrics are, and how important it is to be careful when dealing with the subject matter. Lukas Schuli's work brought the song out of obscurity and into the mainstream, where it remains popular to this day. But as his research shows, this hasn't come without risks. Death threats and extortion attempts have become common, especially for anyone who wants to profit off the song's popularity. In fact, it's believed that one of the reasons certain YouTubers woe and let users upload their videos is because they do and want to risk setting off the mob. Sicilian Americans are particularly wary of this song, because they know firsthand the lengths the mob will go to protect their secrets. After all, it was their ancestors who brought the song to America. When they immigrated here in the early 1900s, the problem was, most American children couldn't pronounce mafiosi, so they called them mafios. Mess caused some degree of confusion when American children sang the song to their dolls and then told their parents that the mafias were coming for them. Parents would then try to explain to their kids that the mafias weren't real. But unfortunately, this caused many people to dismiss their children's fears as mere fantasy. In reality, the mafiosos were very real and extremely dangerous, but they were rarely caught or convicted. Despite all the evidence, witnesses were too afraid to come forward, so the mafiosos were able to operate freely and carry out their crimes without fear of reprisal. Over the years, they amassed huge fortunes, controlling vast criminal empires that stretched across multiple continents. But finally, things began to change. Starting in the late 1970s, a series of high-profile trials saw many mobsters convicted and sent to prison. One of the most famous was the trial of Michael Corleone, who was convicted of racketeering in 1986. But even though justice was finally being served, the threat of the mob didn't disappear overnight. It would take decades before people felt safe enough to talk openly about the mafia. These days, it's much easier to learn about their history and appreciate the courage of those who stood up against them. It's also a reminder that sometimes the greatest evils are the ones we don't even know exist, like the dark lyrics of Mafia. Although it may seem like just a creepy lullaby today, its sinister message was once a powerful tool used by the mob to control and terrify their victims. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out another one on the secret language of the Mafia.